All right, well, happy Wednesday, everybody. It's good to see you. So we have come to the next transition in our teachings. For those of you who are new, we've been going through text by His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, on how to practice the Guide to a Meaningful Life, which in essence is the path to enlightenment. He's been taking us gradually through each piece, and we're making that transition now to the piece on concentration. So in general, the path to enlightenment with the Eightfold Noble Path is broken up into three categories: morality, concentration, wisdom, and then within a Tibetan tradition infused with bodhicitta, the great compassion, the driving force that really empowers that opportunity to be fully liberated and become a Buddha. So we've been taken through the piece, number one, identifying our fundamental problems, our misperceptions, the way we suffer needlessly, and recognizing those habits and conditions that lead to that continuing state of back and forth of suffering and relief of suffering and more suffering and relief of suffering. And starting to identify these causes, we can start to recognize how we can stop watering the seeds that actually create more suffering. That's quite a fascinating thing. Teachers like to say, nobody likes suffering, but we really love its causes. And, we tend to just really love to do the things that ultimately create more problems in our lives. So we make our lives complicated. That's one of the things His Holiness said. So one of the things that you can just really do is simplify your life. The more complicated our life, the more busy our mind, the more things that we have to distract us from the opportunity of being present in our own life and making healthy choices that are more meaningful and engaged in a path that leads to enlightenment. And then he also talked about patience. Fundamentally, we can't get anywhere without patience. There's just no growth potential. And more in my own personal practice, I've come to see this, that if we can't develop a level or degree of patience, of a bit of contentment, or the ability to actually feel a little uncomfortable, to not have every need satisfied or everything question answered, or it's going to be very hard to make any progress at all. So developing this level of patience, and within that level of patience, we can start cultivating the conditions, really, the conditions and qualities that will provide us the opportunity to start to see more clearly and make healthy decisions. And for those conditions to ripen, that's where morality comes in, ethics, good behavior, the qualities that lead to conditions that empower us to have a little more peace in our own lives, a little more happiness, a little more buoyancy, a little more resiliency. And so that's where he's taken us through the pretty straightforward advice to identify the 10 non-virtues and stop doing them. To identify the 10 virtues, start doing those. And my teacher would always say, and then purify. So every day, stop doing harmful things, start doing beneficial things, and purify the karma we've already created. Pretty straightforward. And it's fascinating that as simple as direct instructions as those are, how difficult they are to follow. Yeah, very difficult to follow. Even the idea that we can purify negative karmic imprints. I mean, what a gift. We can purify that. We can show you how to do it. We've done retreats on it. And then the question is, will you do it every day? It's fascinating how few will. And not because of intention or motivation. We just have this inertia of habits and conditioning that to do something new, to increase, even if it's a beneficial habit, it can be really challenging to fit that into our life. We just have this inertia. We might try it for a while. People have done retreats, and you've come home from the retreat, and I'm going to be, in the morning, I got my time set, I got my meditation, evening I'm going to do this, and I do it for a week and 2 weeks, and then it all starts to drift away. And now, I wake up a little late, can't really do my meditation. And tonight, some other things are going, and I didn't feel well. And next thing you know, I don't even have a practice anymore. And yet, a month ago, that was the most important thing in my life. And then the idea that you can purify negative karmic imprints and not have that to deal with, that's a gift. And you can do that every day. Every day. 4 opponent powers. Apply those. Nice little meditation at the end of the day. Really reflecting upon the things that we didn't do very well. And developing an intelligent regret, some wisdom about how I could respond differently in the future, a resolve to do that better. It's really a pretty simple process. You can do it in 10 minutes. And yet, we may not do it. And so, as we engage in this, when we talk about conditions, what is it that prevents that ripening of things that we know are beneficial? When we think about wisdom, wisdom is much more than knowing what to do. Because we can talk all day about knowing what to do. That's more of a philosophy. We all know things that we can do to improve our life. Right? My high school students can make that list. Wisdom is not only recognizing, acknowledging what is beneficial, but actually having the ability to do it. Acknowledging what is not beneficial and having the ability to not do that. That's really a nice measurement of my wisdom in my life, is not only I know that that's unhealthy, harmful, but the wisdom is a realization that empowers me to not engage in that behavior or attitude or thought process. And that we develop over time, and we don't develop that by having discussions about it. That's a nice starting point. The first piece of wisdom is to have a talk about it. But ultimately, if we ever wanted to get from an interesting philosophy to a realization of my life, I need to actually apply it in my life. I need to reflect upon it. I need to understand it. And I need it to be a part of my conscious awareness, my mindful attention to how I live my life. And that's kind of where we're getting to now, is that developing really a stable mind, a mind that holds in mind what's relevant, what's meaningful, living mindfully. So within these conditions, though, we can start developing this ability first by engaging in healthy behaviors, and there's no other way. That's the piece that I think is often forgotten. I've known people meditated for over 20 years that fundamentally aren't any different than they were probably 20 years earlier. It's really tragic in that sense. I've known other people that have meditated for just a few years, and you see amazing change. And I know people that don't meditate much at all, just a few minutes here and there, who've made great change in their life. And what's the difference, And I think the difference is really engaging in this morality, this ethical behavior that creates the conditions that ripen my mind to where I can be more aware of what I'm doing and how it impacts others, and what I'm doing that's healthy and meaningful and what's not. So we can do that. I just reflect on, people that go into treatment programs and they just stop using alcohol and drugs, and suddenly their behavior is already a lot better, because of all the other things you do under the influence, right? And you can watch in a year somebody's life just transform. Now, they're not necessarily meditating, they're not doing anything, but what they're doing is, by not engaging in unhealthy behavior, they have more opportunity to engage in wholesome behavior, and they go to meetings, they're always talking about being better, and they're actually spending that year working on being a better human being. And you'll see a huge thing in just a year. And so I think that's a nice sort of model. It's an easy analogy. if we start engaging in our life in a way of less harm, of more benefit, of less about self and more about a connection with others and a way of being in the world that's more accurate and reflective of the person we even would like to be, we're going to create a lot of inner peace and well-being that allows me to engage in life with a more clear mind. That's the conditions from which we need to have in order to develop a clear mind. You can meditate all day. You can go off for years. But unless I change my behavior and how I interact with others, if I don't change the way that I engage in terms of selfishness or resentments or anger, if I don't start addressing those mental afflictions by healthy, beneficial, ethical behavior, I'm not going to get far with my meditation. It's just not going to go very far. So this first section, I don't know if it was 5 chapters or how many chapters, it was all on that, on creating those conditions and then setting up the motivation for enlightenment. And that provides the conditions to now really having the opportunity to develop the technology, as Alan Wallace calls it, the technology of a mind that can be directed at the nature of who we are, the world we live in, and actually realize liberation, that mind. We can't get very far if so just a quick simple thing with that is, if I'm trying to meditate on the truth of myself or the nature of reality and I'm lying to my boss, right? It's just not going to work very well, right? So if I'm over here, my behaviors and attitudes and stuff don't change, but I'm meditating over here expecting a realization, it's just not going to work. Likewise, just doing the virtuous activity, while it's beneficial, creates good conditions, unless I take some time to start directing my attention and taking that scattered, busy mind and putting it to a focused way of being, I'm not going to have the ability to really develop the insight, the mindfulness of understanding how these little thoughts in my mind lead to behaviors that are unhealthy. And so what happens is, by developing concentration, I can become more ethical. By becoming ethical, I have the opportunity to achieve a more clear mind that's useful and friendly and helpful, as opposed to that scattered mind we have all the time that has its own agenda. Not very helpful, this mind that we carry around. You know, it tells us what to worry about, fear over, stress over. Tells us lots of stories about what could happen or what should have happened or could have been, and often takes our attention away from even being present in our own life. It's referred to as the obsessive compulsive delusional disorder. That is our primary problem, is that we just have a really busy mind, and it's got a lot going on, and it seeks to be entertained. It seeks to be sometimes anesthetized. I mean, that's where that patience comes in. We start to recognize that when we go home, when we go do something, the mind just pops up and says, "Okay, what are we going to do now? What's on? You got a TV show? You got some music going on? Nothing? Come on, what else? Maybe we can call somebody. Hey, you know what? Facebook, maybe you got some Facebook going on. What's going on, you know? And you know, it's not saying, you know, let's just relax and be present and breathe for a few minutes. You start to do that, mind says, no, come on, I got some things to do here. You know, what about you know, come on, even cleaning the house is better than this. Let's not do that. Don't you have chores to do? You know, it's just got stuff going on all the time. It's got something to say and something to do, and it's seeking to be entertained. And the thing about that is, it's a constant pulling away from us just even being present in the activities that we're doing in the moment, such as taking a drink of water. You know, and so if we're to tame that mind, you know, that's where we really need to start to establish some type of a meditation practice that's going to bring that mind in so that we can use our mind and have it become a friend, a useful friend, someone that will help us in our lives rather than point out all the things we could be doing or worrying about or stressing over. That's actually reifying a world that doesn't exist. I mean, that's the big problem. The mind is telling us about a world that doesn't exist. And we're all in. We're all in. We're just so in. You know, we talked about that the other week. It's like a fish being in water. When you're in the water's all you know. Every thought I have is my thoughts. That's who I am. My emotions are my emotions. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm these thoughts. This is the way the world is. That guy's a jerk. That one's kind of cool. I like that person. They're an idiot. My God, they're an idiot. Oh, they're really fun. This is a good thing. This meal's right. And I just have all these perceptions and thoughts, and that's how the world is because it's the way I see it and it's the way I experience it. And so we're like a fish in water. Our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions, our emotions are how we experience the world, and we actually think that world out there is the way I'm experiencing it. Which, if you just take a minute, step back, you realize none of that holds any water, technically. The world we live in is a subjective experience. I mean, that's just an easy way of starting to explain emptiness, which is where we'll eventually get to. But the world we live in is a subjective experience that is changing moment to moment to moment. So my attitude about what I'm doing has a lot to do with how I experience what I'm doing, right? Just my attitude. What makes something an obstacle or an opportunity? Except me thinking it so, right? I mean, Shakespeare will tell you that. My attitude about this is an opportunity to grow or an opportunity, it's just a miserable experience. That's how I address it. If I'm sick, my favorite meal is not very delicious, right? Everything's subjective. My attitude, if I got sleep, didn't get sleep, how I feel today, how I experience you. My best friend could be the person I hate. The person I hate can become the best friend when I find out some things. Somebody tells me a story about how someone, knifed me in the back and talked bad, and I really get angry about it, and then somebody else tells me, no, that's not what he said. Oh, now I like him again. When everything's just changed. Everything I experience is constantly changing. It's a subjective experience. And that's just the way things are. But we really think it's real, and we think that person is that way, or, and that person that we've, 10 years ago did that thing to us. They're that person, and they're that jerk, and they never change. They never change. 10 years ago they did something. I think about it, it's still that person. Like they couldn't have done in 10 years. All kinds of things, We don't question the world we experience, and we just think that's the way it is. And based on those assumptions, which obviously don't hold up to any scrutiny, we start creating all this karma around how we interact with people. People we like, we treat a certain way. People we don't like, we treat a certain way. We get angry. And we just keep watering the seeds of samsara, living in a world that doesn't actually exist in the way that we perceive it. So the Buddha said, well, let's wake up and just start seeing reality. If we start seeing reality, we might actually be able to make some progress here. And the working hypothesis is pretty simple. All of our mental afflictions are dependent upon us misperceiving what's happening. That's all. So if I have an anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, it is dependent upon me misperceiving what is actually happening. And so we have to say, well, if that's true, let's explore that. And so we start exploring that. Simple things that we can get an idea of is that if I water my anger, does my anger go away or does it get stronger? That's kind of a skillful thing. So we talked about that before, and it's just something I think it's really important to understand that sometimes things look a certain way, feel a certain way that don't hold up. So if I get angry, a friend of mine, does something wrong, mistreats me, I can get angry about that. It's a valid anger, right? They mistreated me. Valid anger. I'm angry. Well, I tell my other friend about it because I need to vent, right? I need to get it out. I need to vent. I need to tell you how someone mistreated me, and let me tell you how terrible it was and how they did me, and I vent and I tell this whole story. And then my friend gets angry too and says, yeah, that's right. I don't know how you endure that stuff. And now, but we kind of talk it through, and, as we share it maybe with a few more friends, get a few more people angry. I start to feel better because now my friends are on my side, right? I feel good and they're a jerk over here. So the anger now subsides, right? Now I don't have it. So did all of that take care of my anger? It seems to, doesn't it? It seems to. But what may have actually happened is what I did is I reinforced my anger. I gave all the reasons why it's okay to have that anger. I've nourished that anger. And so as the anger goes away, where does the anger stay? It's in my mind, right? I've validated, I've created conditions so that when somebody mistreats me like that again, anger will arise because I just made all the reasons why it's okay that this anger arises. So some of our behaviors that we think make us better are actually watering the seeds of anger and discontent rather than inner peace, well-being, or actual contentment. Anger cannot arise except for dissatisfaction. So as we focus on the dissatisfaction, we actually create this reinforcement of anger. And so what's the real cause of anger? What's the real cause of anger? And when you start to look at the real cause, well, first off, where is anger? It's in my mind. It's not out there anywhere. Okay. And the real cause of anger, the most common theme Western psychology view is that I'm not getting what I want. Right? I'm being thwarted from what I want. So I think I should have been treated a certain way. I'm not treated a certain way. I get angry. I think that something should have gone down this way. It didn't go down. I get angry. I wanted this to happen. It didn't. I get angry. I think the worst. I get angry. I'm not getting what I want. It's the cause of anger, generally. Dalai Lama will talk about it. If I'm satisfied, that's not going to happen. But anger's in my mind, and the cause of anger is me not getting what I want. And so if I start to understand more accurately these dynamics that take place, well, how do I eliminate anger? I was listening to a great teaching by, it was a quote. I was watching a teaching, but I saw a quote by Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, this great nun who spent all those years as a yogini, 12 years in a cave. And she says, people ask me all the time how to get rid of their anger. Nobody ever asked me how to get rid of their greed. And she's using the reference of greed as that desire, that the thought, the misperceiving that if I get this, I'll be real happy, the desires. Because if we eliminate that type of desire, that type of greed, well, anger's not going to arise, right? Because the belief is that if I satisfy my desires, I'll be happy. And then the anger arises when it doesn't happen. But what happens when we satisfy a desire? We have another one. And then how many times in our life have we had our desires satisfied? We probably can't count. And yet we still get angry, right? It just doesn't work. It never works, right? But our mind doesn't tell us that. Our mind tells us, well, you know what? Let's do it again. Because maybe it'll work this time, And so when we have a mind that far out of control, we're in the fish and water, we perceive things. So we don't question, we don't start to understand, oh, right, my anger is in my mind and it's coming from my perception of what's happening. If I change my attitude about that and see things a little more accurately, maybe it won't arise. And if I yell at people, does that stop anger or does that create more anger? So we start questioning that. But in order to start really understanding the dynamics of how I create my own mental afflictions, we need to be able to observe that. In order to observe that, we need a mind that is aware, that is stable, and that can be our friend. And so that's where he's at here. He says, okay, now we've created these conditions. We want to get to this point. Now we really need to focus on meditation, how to meditate and how to engage in meditations that are going to be beneficial for us. And so he introduces, first off, if we don't have the conditions, the good ethics, we're not going to get very far. But if we create these conditions and now we want to meditate, well, now we need to establish some meditations that are helpful. And so he introduces, it's nice. He's taking some time to really say there's many kinds of meditations. There's basically, he'll start off with two types. One is stability, and one is a more analytical meditation. Not all meditation is the same. Very important to know, okay? Very important to know. I think one of the main reasons people suffer in terms of trying to establish a meditation practice is they don't really know why they're meditating. They learn a type of meditation. They're not really sure what it's supposed to do. That's what they've learned, and they do it, and they don't really know what it's supposed to accomplish. So even though it might be a good meditation, it might not be the right one for them or for what they're doing, or they just don't know. So key point, lamas will tell you, it doesn't matter whether you do this meditation or that meditation, or you sit like this, or you sit like this, or you sit like that. What matters is, does your meditation address your mental affliction? Are you doing the right meditation for that issue? So meditations and the lineages of authentic meditation practices are all designed to address a problem. They're designed to accomplish something. They're designed to this. So His Holiness is going to emphasize the mental stability. He's going to say, well, our biggest problem is that our mind is all over the place. That's our biggest problem. We're distracted, busy mind. So in order to succeed at any meditation, first we want to engage in stability type meditations. So calm abiding, he references here, we call shamatha practice. That's what we did at the start, is we relaxed the body and we rested our mind on one object, in this case the breath. The mind wandered, we brought it back. Mind wandered, we brought it back. And that particular type of meditation is specifically designed to address our biggest mental affliction, which is a busy mind. Right? Because you may have noticed, your mind may have wandered. Could have happened. I don't know. And my attention wasn't where I would like it to be the whole time. So if we're going to develop our attention, that would be the step one. And the tragedy really, I think, in many Buddhist teachings, is that it's the least emphasized meditation practice. You don't hear a whole lot of, let's go concentration meditation retreat. You hear, let's go do Vipassana retreat, right? The highest level insight meditation, or let's go do Dzogchen, or let's go do this. Here's the highest accomplishment, and let's go do that for 10 days or a week. I don't have any foundation for it, but let's go do that because people want that. We don't want that. Unfortunately, when we do that without this foundation, what we do is we get these little moments, and as we find that when we come back into our lives, it quickly falls apart. And we're back to our same old thing. Again, Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, she has the analogy. They have this great nunnery out in Dharamsala, and she had built, and she said, when we were building it, we put a lot of work in the foundation. A lot of work in the foundation. We were up in the Himalayan mountains, the weather, foundation's really important. And when we were doing the foundations, nobody came around and said, my, those are really wonderful foundations. Those are beautiful. Nobody said that. They didn't come around and go, wow, Now that the nunnery is built, people say, what a beautiful nunnery you have. And she says, we wouldn't have that without the foundation. So in order to really develop this opportunity of great insight, of wisdom to access any higher meditation, first we really need to develop the ability to direct our attention where we'd like it to be. The benefits are beyond words that I can explain, probably. Developing the ability to rest my awareness calmly abide my attention right where I would like, not only provides me, just physically, the whole shamatha practice is your whole body becomes this really beneficial process. Things that happen, prana gets unblocked, the flow of energy becomes really wonderful. But my mind, of course, more tranquil. We get to know the bliss, luminosity, and nature of mind itself. It's really incredible. But now I can actually develop the ability to direct my attention where I'd like. Which, imagine this, you have a thought or a worry or a concern, and you can say, I'm not going to pay attention to that. I'm going to pay attention to this. You can choose one thought over another. I want to talk about liberation. Stress, worry, fears, concerns, So the ability to cultivate shamatha, or calm abiding, is the ability to really develop a friendship and a relationship with the mind and have my mind be serviceable in alignment with the path that I'd like to travel, the life I'd like to live, and the power to actually, if I'd like to read a book, I read a book. If I'd like to engage in a conversation, I'm there. I'm engaged in a conversation. If I'd like to daydream, I daydream, and I know I'm daydreaming. But basically, I actually have the ability to choose where my attention is and let it be there. That's pretty incredible. And now if I develop that, then when I do these other meditations, now I have a mind that's serviceable to do analytical meditation, vipassana meditation, and so forth. So he emphasizes that, this is where we start, this is the types, and he mentions, sort of the techniques there. And with the unique feature to a shamatha type meditation is simply this, that you focus on one thing to the exclusion of all else. You have one object of meditation. So whatever else the mind wants to go to, you just bring it back. So there's different types. So Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo said her first instruction by these old yogis was a stone, a rock. So she said a rock, and she had to stare at a rock. And she said, it's interesting. It had to be a certain level away, so her gaze was right and so forth. But she just said the thing about a rock that was helpful was it's not that interesting. Okay, right? Nothing to get the mind away. It's a rock, and it wasn't too shiny. It wasn't reflecting, so it wasn't too bright for her mind. And she could bring her gaze there, and it kept her eyes open, so it trained her eyes at a particular level. It was a really helpful tool. Twigs and rocks are in abundance in the world, so you don't even need to go to that famous yogi store where you can spend $250 on whatever meditation equipment you need. You can get a rock or a stone, and you can do it. The method most employed, the Buddha taught more than any other, is the breath. And the thing that's just incredibly powerful about the breath is the breath only happens in this moment. Right? You're not breathing in the past, you're not breathing in the future, you're only breathing right now. And within all the texts on sort of the antidotes to different things, the method most often taught for busy ruminating mind is the breath. It's just been that one, and we mostly have a busy ruminating mind. Multitask. So the breath, because it's very tangible, it's only happening in this moment, and it's accessible at all times. You don't even have to go find a rock. Right? You got it. It's there. And so, and it's something that you can access when you're moving and when you're doing other things. So it's always there. So the breath's a really good one. There's also images that you can do, and so, things like that. We don't go through all those. But the idea with a shamatha type practice is that each day we set aside the time to create the conditions. And we've already talked about how you can really create a really conducive environment for meditation. So we talked about how we create a nice little meditation spot, how we make offerings. We have an altar here, and you bring the Buddha's present, and you're inviting them here, and so you're actually ripening your mind to sit in this beautiful place with the intention to benefit all beings and ripen. So by the time we're even getting ready for the meditation, going through those 7 limbs of practice, you've really created this virtuous state of mind that you can meditate in. So that's really wonderful, and he guided us through all that. But he also says here that the benefits of this not only allow us a brilliant, sharp mind, the other benefits are pretty simple. One is you actually remember things. It's amazing, What'd you do this morning, Who'd you talk to? What's going on, When you develop this mind, you're able to be really clear without... So the problems are... Our basic problem is usually excitation, busy mind, or laxity, right? A really dull, lethargic mind. I can't pay attention. It's like you're trying to read a book, you can't get into it, can't listen. My mind's dull, and my mind's too excited. It's got a lot of stuff going on. When you go to meditate, you'll see... that's why I also like watching about the real long retreats that people go on to. It's just this... not a good habit. Okay, not a good habit. You're bucking up trying to do it, but it's we have a dull mind, we have an excited mind. Rarely do we have that bright, clear, discerning mind. And that's really what shamatha provides. So when we teach shamatha practice, we teach to do it in shorter sessions, right? Shorter sessions. And do them well, and then add a little more time. So if you were going to train with, so there's a group that went up to train with the great lamas, Gen Lama Rinpa, and going to do a year-long retreat, learn shamatha, really go after it. So they're going to be meditating at some point about 15, 16 hours a day, do that for about a year. You know how long their meditations were when they started? 24 minutes. 24 minutes. Is it 24 minutes? You do several of those a day, so you get good at those. As they got better, they increased their time and they did less sessions. But first it was shorter sessions and more sessions. By the end of the year, then they had much longer sessions, and they developed that. So the idea is that we want to really have a fresh, wonderful, good experience with our meditations. If you make those commitments to do an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, and then what happens, right? I have to go meditate. Oh my God. That's not going to be conducive to a nice, steady thing. But if I do, I actually started many years ago with 10 minutes a day. So 10 minutes a day. About 16 years ago, I started 10 minutes a day. And 10 minutes felt like an hour, I got to tell you. Felt like I was doing an hour. But after a while, I could actually pay attention to my breath for all of 10 minutes. I was like, wow, okay. Then I did 15, then I did 20. So, and 10 minutes a day every day was more helpful than, an hour here and there with bad habits. So His Holiness here is saying, establish a good practice. And the way to do that is really to create a nice environment, know why you're doing it, okay? So what this empowers us to do is address our biggest mental affliction. And it also empowers us to start to have some free will in our own life. I mean, that's something I emphasize. It's not in the book. But the only free will I have in my life is only to the degree with which I'm actually there to make a choice. And if my mind's not there, how much of my life do I have any choice? Because I'm not even there to make the choice. You know, so when the studies have shown that our mind is, in average in the U.S., not present about half of the time of our waking hours. Our mind's not on what we're doing. So half of your waking hours we're not even present with what we're doing. It's hard to think about how much I'm making choices in my life. And then if I am here, how many of my choices have any bearing in reality because I'm labeling or I'm angry or I'm, So it's just this real small window we might actually have some power to make healthy choices that are based in reality, which is where we get some freedom. So we want to, in order to meditate, know, hey, I'm going to do this concentration meditation so that I can train my mind to start paying attention to the things I would like it to. That would be awesome, wouldn't it? And so we start. So I know why I'm doing it, and it's measurable. You'll notice within a month, is my mind better than it used to be? You can see that. You have something to measure. You know why you're doing it, and that's the issue. And then you might notice the quality of your meditation and add more time and so forth. So he says here, let's start with developing this concentration. Now, as I do this, I'm going to notice that if my ethics are better, my concentration will be better. When I'm doing things I don't feel good about, it's hard to be calm. When I'm doing things I feel good about, it's easier to meditate. When I meditate and have more clarity, guess what I'm more able to do? Make healthy choices that I feel good about. They feed each other. They feed each other. So when we go into it, he sets a good motivation to sit and to meditate and have a good posture, do your practice. But I'm doing this so I can truly be of benefit to all beings, so I can see a path, so that I can engage in healthy, meaningful behavior. And so I have a motivation, and then the tools of mindfulness and introspection come in. So mindfulness is knowing where my mind is. So if I'm supposed to be on my breath, my mindfulness might notice that right now I'm on the chocolate ice cream, Denali chocolate ice cream with bits in my freezer at home. So my mind will notice that I'm there. And, oh, you're supposed to be on your breath. Yeah, okay. So mindfulness is that thing that reminds us what's going on. It's aware of where my mind is and what's going on. And introspection is this level that we can start to then gauge the quality of my meditation. Is my posture okay? Is my mind where it's supposed to be? And keeping me, is my mind too excited? Do I need to do something to bring my mind back in balance? Is it too lax? Do I need to inspire my practice? So we have introspection. Mindfulness is the awareness of where it's going. Introspection is making the adjustment. So in a meditation course, you're going to learn posture, you'll learn the meditation, and you'll need the tools of mindfulness and introspection to engage in that. And when we engage in a meditation practice, really important. My teacher emphasizes this a lot. You do not ever try to evaluate your meditation by one session. That was a good session, this is a bad session. Throw that out the window. If you really want to gauge your meditation practice, look back over a month or 6 months and go, is my mind getting better? Am I more attentive? Because when those sessions that come and go, they will come and go. If you really want to evaluate whether you had a good meditation session, did you follow the directions? If the directions were, when my mind wanders, come back to the breath. If I notice my mind and I went back to the breath, that was pretty good because I'm following the directions. The biggest impediment into making successful progress in meditation is to micromanage each session and to have an expectation about how it should go. So the pith instructions of being successful in any meditative endeavor is to abandon all hope and fear. I have no idea how this is going to go, but I know the directions. So that's the deal, is I'm going to sit down, I'm going to follow the directions. And my mind might be 1,000 times in different places. I might bring it back 1,000. Other times it might be beautiful and focused and bright. And then I'll sit down the next time and it's all over the place. And I think, well, that's bad and that's good. Every time you follow the direction, you're training your mind. And that's really where we make progress. So understanding that. Make a commitment to have a regular practice, and that's his advice here. Establish a nice place to do your meditation and a routine. It's nice to do it in the morning before your mind gets too busy. And really start with a calm abiding. Now, there are other meditations. They are helpful, and you don't always have to wait till you have a clear, stable mind to do other meditations that are beneficial. So the analytical meditations, or he had these other two. I hadn't, other than this book, I haven't really seen it presented this way, but he talked about subjective and objective meditations, which is a nice way to look at it. So we might want to develop a little more compassion in our life so we can meditate. He called it a subjective meditation. We'd like to cultivate this in our mind. We're not meditating on compassion, but we're meditating to become more compassionate or loving and kind. And so he calls this a subjective meditation, whereas, we're kind of taught, if I want to be more compassionate, like there's these meditations where we start thinking about how others suffer and how we've suffered and how they're like us, and we can bring these to mind. We get compassion. People we don't like, we kind of know some of their struggles and things they've gone through, and we start to recognize that, and we're developing compassion. So there, you don't have to wait till you have the clear, bright mind to do these minutes. They're helpful. 5 minutes really reflecting on the suffering of others really can help us in our morning. And we have 4 immeasurables that we teach that it's nice to do every day: equanimity, compassion, loving kindness, and empathetic joy. And they're great to do. 5 minutes. So what we water grows. So contemplative meditations like that are really beneficial to do. So, feel free to do that. Objective meditations, he talked about, where you're focusing on an object. So, and it could be an object like impermanence, right? Impermanence. I'm not trying to develop impermanence in my mind. I am trying to gain some insight in the nature of impermanence, the fact that everything will come and go, and this body will come and go, and things change, and that is one of the most powerful meditations that will give us a lot more patience in our life and a lot less of that greed attachment that creates a lot of anger. Things change, right? And the impermanence of even my anger. Guess what will happen if I don't water it? It'll go. It changes. So these other meditations, are also helpful to be reflective. Sometimes it's nice to, if there's just a verse you like or a nice quote that you like, to just spend some time on that quote. Think about that quote. Contemplative meditation. Really, really powerful. 5 minutes. So those are good as well. Then, of course, the meditations that lead to sort of the direct insight to the nature of reality, the highest ones is, what we'd call meditations on emptiness, the empty nature of phenomena itself, where we can start really looking at how things are subjective, relational, how they change, and how we label things. When it's nice to do those too, and it cracks the door and it gives us more ability to interact with others in healthier ways. So there are these other meditations, and they're helpful. But fundamentally, without the regular, consistent, stabilizing practices, the other ones we won't get the good use out of. So it's okay to dabble in them, keep them watering. I was actually trained in all the analytical ones first. I never learned shamatha, so I was like, sitting on the edge. I mean, that's what our Gelugpa tradition is. Well, they do emphasize shamatha. I just didn't hear that. So, I'm going through all the Lam Rim, and I got a great deal of benefit because I would meditate for hours on the nature of suffering, and I recognize that. I see I get it. So the idea is 3 wisdoms. We hear a teaching, then we contemplate it, and we meditate on that realization. Really good process. So fundamentally, recognizing, you can really recognize that my mental and emotional suffering is not because of you. I just know that. It doesn't, there's never a thought in my mind, if you were different, I'd be happier. It doesn't work. It's not the way the world is. And if you meditate on kind of understanding that, you'll get a realization of that, and life becomes so much simpler. So it's beneficial. You can do these meditations. But you won't get enlightened. Okay, you won't get enlightened. That's kind of the drawback. In order to really achieve enlightenment, liberation, the path of full awakening, it is required to achieve that mental stability that shamatha provides. So that's, so folks that are dedicated to the path, they'll go away 2 years and they'll develop that mind, then they'll go through the vipassana and focus on that. So what he's emphasizing here is, here's a full path to enlightenment. Everything in this book is going to take you to full enlightenment. But also that you can engage in these practices to reduce suffering in your life right now, today, as you engage in that path. So a nice steady practice to tame our mind. And if I know why I'm meditating, I might actually do it. Could happen. And so if I'm doing like a different type of meditation, like loving kindness, well, if I know that loving kindness is the antidote to anger and hatred, well, now I kind of understand why I'm doing it, Eliminate that. If I know that compassion, is the antidote to ill will and cruelty in my own mind, and a force to engage in healthy practice, well, then I know why I'm doing that meditation. So understand, when we get meditation instruction, we want to, make sure it's qualified instruction. Meditation, one of the big myths is meditation is good for you. Is that true? Meditation can be really good for you. Meditation can be kind of neutral. And meditation can be harmful. It depends which one you're doing, why you're doing it, and whether you're doing it properly, right? So not all meditation's equal. They're not all designed to do the same things. And some people can meditate for years and actually get less engaged in their life in meaningful ways. Some people can meditate for years, make progress. Some people just kind of neutral. And so when we engage in a practice, we want to, make sure we have proper instruction that's authentic meditation. And we know why we're doing it. And so we're engaging in it properly. And that way we can gauge its progress. Is it actually doing what it's supposed to do? And is it addressing the issues that I'd like addressed, getting me where I'd like to go? If it's not even designed to get me where I want to go, it's really not going to be that helpful. Not going to be that helpful. So here, I'm trying to remember what else he put in this chapter. He emphasizes shamatha. He acknowledged these other meditations and that they are beneficial. So, feel free to, it's nice. When my teacher gives a whole, even if you go do a shamatha retreat for 2 months, he's going to include these other meditations on loving kindness, on compassion, on the 4 immeasurables. And so they'll always be infused. It's nice to break things up and do that, but just make sure that every day a part of your meditation is on concentration, so that your mind comes along for the ride and it imbues the other ones. And so now that we establish a regular practice, when we engage in our day, the next pith instruction is simply this. When we get off the meditation cushion, that's not when our practice stops. That's really, we need to bring that mind into our day. That's the hard part. You may have noticed when the gong went off, what happens? The mind, all right, man, we're done. All right. And we're just, it's just gone, And so the idea of building up this reservoir is so that I can now bring this into my day and make healthy choices, be more attentive in my interactions, and be mindful. Mindful is mindful of the person I want to be, the values I have, the way I want to engage in life. I'm mindful of my ethics and values and what's healthy and not healthy. You know, it's that mindfulness that's always watching and reminding us where my mind is, and noting what is healthy and what's not. And so we really want to develop that level of mindfulness that we can engage in the day. And notice that I went 3 hours, I haven't even thought about being a kinder person. I haven't even thought about it, you know. I haven't even thought, you know, I've just been doing all kinds of stuff, you know, and then, you know, 4 more hours go by before I think about, you know, who I am or this moment, you know. And so that mindfulness wants to always, it's a mindfulness that, when we talk about mindfulness in the Tibetan tradition, it's guarding the mind. It's really a sense of guarding my mind from all the unhealthy activities. You know, what we feed our mind is much more important than what you feed your body. Much more important. So if I'm just feeding my mind garbage of anger, resentment, and, you know, gossip, and just all day long, and then I sit down and I think I'm going to meditate, it's not going to work very well. Nor am I cultivating contentment, or am I cultivating dissatisfaction, desire, and so forth. So mindfulness is really guarding and watching my thoughts, and noting what's healthy and what's not, and being mindful of the activities I engage in. And are they cultivating merit and wisdom in my life, or are they taking me away from that? Are they creating genuine happiness and well-being, or are they creating more suffering, more desire, more dissatisfaction? That's what mindfulness is about. So we want to develop that in our meditation so we can bring it into the day. So it's kind of, you know, those of you who've been around for a while, I always call the meditation more as fueling up my gas tank so I can go do my practice. You know, not the idea I fuel it up and then I leave it there. So the continuity of consciousness, of practice in my daily life, is where all the change makes place. So going back to the start of the conversation, if my practice is limited to meditation and not into my behaviors and activities, I'm not going to get far. Dalai Lama's what's quote on that. Prayer and meditation are not enough. It's your actions that are required to make change. So, so the idea is I'm doing this so I can do this better. And here's where you're going to gain your realization. Here's where you get to do your work. You do not develop patience and tolerance and compassion by sitting on a cushion. You develop patience by sitting with somebody you really don't like for an hour. That's where you develop tolerance and patience. You develop wisdom and understanding by noting those mental afflictions arising as you're engaged in doing things that you don't really like to do. This is where we gain our insights. So we want to bring that awareness into the interactions, and this is where we get to really fuel up and develop the mind that we can bring into our day. In that day, then, those activities at the evening, we can do another meditation, and that's where we can purify the unhealthy activities and reinforce the healthy ones. Really dedicate that to all beings, cultivate that merit for all beings, and reinforce those habits. So that's kind of the idea of practice there. All right, that brings us right up to 7 o'clock, go figure. So the next chapters that they get into are wisdom, the nature of reality itself, so we'll apparently be going down a rabbit hole. But here with meditation, really be gentle with yourself, have a regular practice, shorter periods of time, you know, so it's refreshing, feels good, and you're giving yourself a really good opportunity to be more engaged in your own life. It's a good thing. You want that kind of relationship with meditation. Announcements I'm just going to do because I didn't really have time to tell Aaron. So our retreat, which is next weekend, not this coming weekend, but the next weekend, a couple people can't make it, so there are a couple openings. So anyone who would like to attend the retreat at Juanita Hot Springs Ranch, it's three nights, 3 days. We have a couple spots. So if you'd like to, just you can see Shannon, or I'm going to point to you anyway. Yeah, sign somebody up. Why not? Or if you're online, you can sign up at our website at Way of Compassion Dharma Center. So a couple more openings. Beautiful place to go do a retreat, and we're going to go through these 4 Noble Truths. The monks, we just got confirmation that we'll be hosting the monks of Ganden Shartse Monastery again, August 26th through the 31st. So the monks from our monastery will be here. So we'll get to have some events. We'll be having a planning committee in a couple weeks, and then we'll plan that. So 26th through the 31st, so that's exciting. And then every Saturday, we offer a Chenrezig Sig practice, the Buddha of Compassion. And so we do that sadhana every Saturday morning at 8:30. If anybody'd like to do that, we meet here at 8:30, do the sadhana practice. Takes about an hour. And then we are also doing a more in-depth discussion of this text every Saturday at 10:30? 10. I knew that because my memory is really good. 10:30, Saturday. I got that day right. So we invite you. The center is designed that these Wednesday teachings are hopefully helpful for anyone at any level. Those who want a Tibetan Buddhist practice, we have that on Saturday morning. And those who just like to learn more about Buddhism, we have the books there. Those are 3 offerings. And then, of course, any offerings that you make and the donations help keep this center running. If you want to be a part of our Sangha, become a spiritual friend, there's some info on the website, or you can see Shannon or Aaron or Julie or Jay or, anyway, some of these folks. So thank you all for being with me, and all of you that make these conditions possible. We'll do our dedication, and then I'll go look into that chocolate ice cream at home.
You do have a memory.
I do. Yeah, it's funny, just quick. People will say, they're not very good at visualization. So a lot of Tibetan Buddhism will have you visualize like the Buddha, or visualize these great big visualizations. And my teacher would first laugh at them, and then when he got done laughing, laugh with them. He would say, "Oh, you can't visualize. Can you visualize your favorite meal?" People, "Oh yeah, I can do that." And what he's pointing out is it's difficult to visualize things we're not used to. But meditation is to become familiar with. What we bring to mind again and again, we become familiar with. It's really easy. So our meditation becomes that way. I'm very familiar with the chocolate ice cream that's in my freezer. I'm not very familiar with all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but I can visualize that. So these are skills we develop. Okay, so we've taken some time here on Wednesday to cultivate merit and wisdom. So let's just take a moment to dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have accumulated both individually and collectively, both here today and through our lives, for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to gain more clarity and wisdom in our own path to enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. All right. Thank you all. Be well. Try to stay out of trouble. And we'll see you when I'm looking at you. Thank you for joining us online. It's really cool.